Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 1st, 2021 Board Budget Subcommittee meeting. We have Trustee Zhang and Trustee Prasad with us, as well as our staff. And Trustee Zhang, I will hand it over to you to begin the process.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Kellick. Let's see. So we're just going to look at all the things related to the dollar sign. So is the student Khan here? He's not.
Student Board Member Khan is not here yet.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's go with 11.1. That's routine. Okay. And positive behavior. And that is under the title, subcategory. And my question is, we also have another on the extended learning program, but that is also using this PBIS, which is the funding source is the extended learning funding. So are they overlap?
You're asking for the expanded learning opportunity grant?
Yeah, because they also include the PBIS program.
Right. And so I don't know, Mr. Parangao, if you have information in front of you regarding where the 10,800 may be coming from for this contract for the Santa Clara County Office of Ed?
No, I don't have any of that information at this time, but that certainly we could provide clarification.
I apologize. I read the wrong number from my screen. It's 80,000. And
Right.
for our audience who may be watching, this is a contract with Santa Clara County Office of Education. It's not uncommon for county offices to provide PBIS training, positive behavior interventions and support plans. And this is something that a lot of county offices do. And we have a number of schools that we're contracting with. In this case, I believe that it will be funded using categorical funding, but it doesn't specify which funding source that is. It certainly would be something that qualifies. Actually, it is here as Title IV and LCAP. So this is a mixture of our Title IV dollars and our LCAP dollars, not ELOG.
Right, this one is. But then we also have an ELOG, and which also support this kind of program, the same program.
Yes.
So I'm just thinking we're not going to duplicate, I mean, we want to make sure our funding number is accurate, not double count or etc.
Right. So we may utilize the ELOG dollars to fund PBIS at other schools.
I see.
We're maximizing the use of our dollars by using multiple funding sources for these schools as well.
Okay, so this is only supported for certain elementary schools.
Yeah, this is for
support year one training.
In year one training, there's Gomes, Glenmore, Mission San Jose Elementary, and Green. And then there's another cohort of Niles, Cabrillo, Warwick, Mission Valley, Chadbourne, Forest Park, Maloney, and Wybell.
Okay.
So it's part of our multi-year plan for all 28 sites, but we aren't able to provide this kind of training for all 28 at the same time.
Okay. As well as to support year one training for cohort 1, 2, or 3. So that means the rest of it will be supported by ELOG funding.
Yes, likely so. Or in the future years, we may continue to use categorical funding combined with LCAP funding if that's the desire of the LCAC and the board approved LCAP plan.
Okay, thank you for that. And 11.3, this is psychologist. And so that's also a routine thing, just to only indicate there is increased demand for assessment.
Yes, we have an increase in a backlog of assessments in part due to the pandemic.
Okay,
And so in order to get those assessments completed, we're bringing on additional staff to do so. And it's a 0.8 increase of our staffing.
all right. Okay, so let's see, the 12.1, and this one we denial the claim, and then what?
So once we deny the claim, our liability insurance will take over from there, and they will continue to work with the claimant and make a determination as to next steps. And they'll do that for each of our claims.
Okay, all right. So I see this item quite a few times. I mean, for $3,000, I see.
Yes, we'll receive multiple claims per year for different things. And the denial of claims is generally a standard part of our practice with our liability insurance coverage. And we will go through that process with each claim, and then they'll investigate after the denial.
Okay, all right. So let's see. Photography, that's okay, routine. And is this routine as well? No, information technology system, project management and oversight. Oh, that's a Measure E.
Yes, so this is Measure E. It's not necessarily routine, but part of what this does is it allows for our technology team through a consultant service to have technology as part of the conversation that is happening with the construction. And what we certainly know across the industry is that when we don't have technology involved in the beginning in the planning process, it is often too late or very expensive to fix it after that. So this allows the consultants to be a part of our planning and design for technology purposes.
Okay. But this one, which is this happen to all buildings or across the campus? I'm sorry, I did not read this.
That's okay. It really may depend on the scope of the construction. So some projects that we do may not have a significant technology impact. Other facilities that we're working on or building may have a significant impact on technology. So it really depends on the scope of the project, but these would be for our Measure E projects.
Okay. Oh, actually, I forgot to see whether we have any public comment.
I have not received any public comment.
I have not received anything either.
Okay, I also see whether we have other like attendance in, I don't see any either.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about the 12.4? Are we going to continue this one, or this one is being pulled out?
This is staying on the agenda. This is coming back to the board from some work earlier in September. And this is for the Guidepost LLC. And you will notice the 12.3 above it is for an architect firm, and it's related to the same scope and discussion.
Okay, okay. So what do you mean 12.3 is regarding the same thing? 12, we talk about the IT, yes, that's 12.3 and 12.4, which is about security and safety and security.
Trustee Zhang, you may have an older copy of the agenda if you're looking at a hard copy.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you're only one number off, so we'll be able to work through it, no problem. But what I'm referring to, it might be 12.4 and 12.5 on your agenda. And so both of them are related to services for security and safety. One is for architect designs. The other is for technical specifications and product evaluation, but both related to security.
Okay. So this security is related to like a security camera or security system?
It would be a security system in general, and it may include multiple types of security. Kelly, I don't know if you have other information on that.
I'm actually not really at liberty to speak about what our actual designs are, but it is a comprehensive approach for us to evaluate how to secure our properties. And I'll be happy to provide you with more detailed information, but for the sake of security and people who are watching, I don't want to necessarily tell them what exactly it is that we're doing, but it is an overhaul comprehensive program that does include multiple types of devices and security measures. So, but as I said, if you want me to give you more details, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Okay, but Kelly, is this for the newer building, the newly constructed or a renovated building, or anywhere?
These are for all the projects that fall within the Measure E program.
I see.
So whether it's the current buildings that are under construction, they're actually working with the builders to incorporate those things into the buildings right now.
I see.
And also the ones that have been recently completed, they are also being looked at to modify and to ensure that the standards that the district has established for safety are going to be met and security.
Oh, okay. Is this security thing is a part of the planning in the beginning, or it's just we thought about based on the last year's situation, we decide to add this evaluation?
So it was my understanding that it was not in the original scope of work when the bond was originally created 4 or 5 years ago. And since we have had such an escalation in vandalism and theft and just physical safety, it's now been brought to the forefront that we have to make sure that we incorporate certain measures and steps to ensure that the sites are safe.
Okay. So the evaluation is 95,000 for each company, each vendor. Do you have
Correct.
any idea like the real cost when we have
So the interesting thing is, back in September when we originally had approved this company, they were actually a kind of like a joint venture because the architectural team specializes in the architectural documentation for the security systems and the submission requirements for us to submit things to DSA. Guidepost is actually a security company that specializes in products and technical specifications. So the two of them submitted their proposal together as one. And I said, well, we have to separate them so that you all have two individual contracts because you're two very specific companies. And so we split everything down the middle, and that's what you have, that they have the exact same number in terms of what their fee is, because they're equally providing the same service for the scope of work. So that's why it's like that.
I see.
Now, this design and evaluation will apply to all sites?
It will apply to all the sites that are within the Measure E program. Currently, I don't have any unrestricted funds that I'd be able to apply to do district-wide. So the best thing that we have right now are the projects that fall within the Measure E program that I can actually take care of.
And so then, so would, let's say if you had the money in unrestricted funds, would the same number of dollars cover all sites?
No, there would actually be an increase in their cost.
Different?
Yes, the cost would increase.
Right. The cost would increase. We have no idea, like, it would be like
increase proportionally, or?
I can provide that information to you guys. I don't have that information in front of me, but it would increase marginally. I'm not going to say it would double, but we are covering a significant amount of our sites. So we would probably have 30% left to do, give or take if we were looking at numbers. But I'll be happy to provide that information to you guys in my Friday update.
Okay, so I mean the bottom line is if we approve this now, then this project starts with this subset of sites, not all sites.
Correct.
And then we'll have to do it all over again for the remaining sites. Or does the design apply to others? Would it be still some incremental dollars, or would it become a $100,000 project one more time?
I want to make sure I understand. So we're going to be covering all of the sites that fall within the Measure program. So the Measure program covers a significant amount of our sites. It's not just the middle schools, it's not only the group ones, but there's a significant amount of projects that were completed under the Prop 39 dollars, as well as some modernization work that was done at several elementary school sites. So all of those school sites are included. The remainder of what has been unfunded or not funded for Measure E, those are the sites that will not be addressed within this particular scope of work. So we will have to come back.
Roughly what percentage of sites are those?
Well, that's what I was saying. It's about 30% of our sites that are not going to be covered. So we have 70% coverage under our Measure E, and about 30% of them are not covered under Measure E.
And at some point, if we find some unrestricted funds, would the same design and product evaluation need to be done again? For all, well, I suppose design would have to be done.
The design would have to be done, but the product specification, once we have a standard established for our elementary schools and for our middle schools and for our high schools, they can be applied accordingly. But the design services, of course, will have to be done because each site is different. So we will see an increase in our cost for that. There are going to be some other instances that pop up that require us to either change the scope or modify the scope based on what they have to do. And I, of course, will bring that information back to you all if we have a need to increase their dollars for whatever unforeseen things may pop up.
And then to extend my question, so now that we have 30% that we'd have to do separately for design, if you get it bid separately, will it be 30% of this cost, or it would be much higher?
You know, I can't answer that because, you know, we're in 2021 dollars right now, and I don't know if we finish this work by 2022, if they would be willing to hold their price, but that's something I can consider and ask them to do. But I can't say that we would be, you know, exactly spot on, because we do have to calculate and figure escalation and price increase based on time moving forward. But I'm sure we can have a conversation to see if that's something that they'd be willing to do.
Okay, and what is the time sensitivity for these items to be approved in this board meeting?
We actually really need them to be approved now in order for them to actually have work completed in the summer at the sites that need it, while construction is going on this summer. Because if we've already, I mean, we've proposed this to be to the board about 3 different times now. So this is kind of my last sort of push to get them approved so that we can actually implement the work while the summer work is going on, and have the design as well as the implementation be able to occur while a lot of the middle school underground construction work is going on, so that we can incorporate it into the infrastructure and have it sort of seamlessly blended into the work that's going on right now.
Okay, makes sense. So then my ask would be to just work with the design team and see if we can hold the pricing. Because 30% of this 95K is what, some $27,000, $28,000. And if we want to bid it again later, if there's a way to hold the price, then let's hold the price.
It's definitely worth a discussion, and I'd be happy to have that discussion with them.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. But interesting is, I think this is the first time I see this item. Is this first time it's being agendized?
No, it was actually agendized prior to your arrival, Trustee Zhang.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
that's probably why it's not familiar to you.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. Let's see what else. So we'll skip the 13.2, 13.3. So Trustee Prasad, if you want to mention some items, feel free to jump in. Okay, so yeah.
Yes, I'm driving, so I can't see.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna read you the
Yes.
title, okay?
Yeah.
So 13.2, forgive me, my number may be off for one. 13.2 is approve classified personnel actions. And the following 1.3 is approve athletic coaches. I think those are all routine. You want to skip them? Because they are pretty routine. We're doing this last meeting as well.
Right. So I just asked if there's anything extraordinary in there that needs to be discussed. If not, we move on.
Well, maybe CJ.
No, they're routine. We can move forward.
Okay, and think we can skip the return in person instruction. Is there anything else that you want to add, Superintendent Kamick, on this one?
No, this is just an update based on where we are. There's not any significant new information on that related to the finances.
Okay, and now this following one, 6.2, hold a public hearing on the 21-22 preliminary budget. And that is a big one. So I think I would like Associate Superintendent to give us an overview before I can ask any questions.
Sure, I'll be happy to. I hope you have the presentation in front of you. If you don't, it's okay. I'll try to walk you through on it.
Okay, I have it.
So this is a requirement of the education code that the board has to hold a public hearing before it gets submitted for approval. And that's why we're doing this on the June 3rd board meeting. And then it will be submitted to the board on June 23rd. No, June 2nd. The June 23rd will be submitted for the final approval. And so that's according to Ed Code 42127. Before we go into the preliminary budget for 2021, do you want me to share my screen, or is it okay to just go over it?
I'm okay. What about, well, I guess.
I could share my screen if you.
Oh, sure. That's better.
Yeah. Let me see if this works. I know I'm having a little trouble with Zoom on sharing screen. I don't have a problem with Google on that. Let me try that. See if I could share my screen. Screen number 2, share.
Yep.
Are you seeing my screen? Okay, good.
Yep.
Good. So yeah, before we go into the preliminary budget for 21-22, we would like to go over the 2021 general fund, which is the current year, and the progression of our budget from the adopted all the way to today. And so you see the column here. We got the adopted 45-day first interim, second interim, and now here we are for the current year estimated actual. What you'll see here is that our revenue is projected to be 429 million, and our expenditure is about 417 million. And we're projecting a surplus of about $12 million. Our beginning balance is estimated at 32 million, and our projected ending balance for this year is $44 million. We had to designate some of the amounts that are not spent, specifically ELOG funds. We received the first half of them, but the expenditures won't happen until the next year. And therefore, we have to designate the $12.5 million.
I see.
That leaves us with about $31.3 million in reserve, which is equivalent to 7.51%. As compared to the last time that we made an update to you, it was 3.77%. So it certainly is an improvement from the last time we presented. The next,
the revenue, sorry, the revenue increase of the E compared with D is the increase of the half of the E-log.
yes, part of that was an increase in E-log. E-log is approximately $11 million by
Right.
itself. And then there are a few other revenues that increased from the second interim to the estimated actual, primarily made up of one-time funds, state and federal revenues. And so, and that happened only from March all the way to today.
Okay.
Now, are any of these funds have a spending deadline, like from the CARES Act and others?
Yes, E-log needs to be spent by August 2022. And there is the part of that also, there is the ESSER or ESSER funds that also were identified. And yes, there were some deadlines. I just don't know exactly the deadline of the ESSER, but yes, there is a deadline on it.
No, so those are the designated. You separated those out already. So anything
Correct.
that you put on the bottom line for the general fund, there are no strings attached with any of those.
That is correct. Once
Okay.
once it becomes part of the reserve, those are unrestricted dollars. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
On page 4, here, this is just yet another recap of the 2021. And what we're trying to communicate here is the breakdown between unrestricted general fund and restricted general fund. The total, the third column, is similar to the first slide, except that we broke them down between unrestricted and restricted. One big takeaway that we would like to share here with you is on the second line, which is the contributions. As you could see here, unrestricted general fund is contributing about 57.5 million to the restricted general fund, and those are primarily made up of special education deficit. And so nearly about over $40 million, or 45 to $48 million of that was a deficit in the special education program that needs to be covered by the unrestricted funds. The second, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. You said that only 40 million is deficit need to be covered, but then why we give them 57.5?
There is another requirement for our routine restricted maintenance. So we have a maintenance and operation and grounds department in the district. It is a requirement of the law that we have to set aside 3% of the total general fund budget to move into the routine restricted maintenance, which is on the restricted general fund. And so we have to move that money to be able to maintain our building and our facilities in the district. So all the maintenance staff who comes into our site are funded coming from the routine restricted maintenance, which is a contribution from the unrestricted general fund.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. The other takeaway here on this slide is also in terms of reserve. We don't generate reserve under the restricted general fund because they are earmarked dollars. When the state and the federal government says, here is the funding for you, that has to be earmarked and it's not meant to be used for reserve. We only generate reserve from the unrestricted, and that's why you see at the bottom of this, you see 0 in the reserve and you see 31.3 million in the unrestricted reserve, which is makeup of the 7.51%.
Okay.
And so moving on into the revenue assumptions, we're now entering into the 21-22 and building, what are the building blocks in developing our 21-22. So we start with our local control funding formula. And we have our enrollment at 34,678, which is 104 students lesser than the prior year. Our attendance rate is at 97.46%, which is equivalent to 33,978 ADA. However, because we are now under the hold harmless rule, meaning like we could use a higher ADA for LCFF funding, we're using our 2019-20 number, which is 34,011. COLA, as I mentioned at the last meeting, is 5.07%. Unduplicated pupil percent is about 26.64%. Now, in the federal revenues, it's generally flat. We don't generally project for any cost of living adjustment from the federal government. But there is one big reduction because the one-time funds, particularly the CARES Act and the federal LLMF for the I'm losing what the LLMF again is. It's the
Learning loss.
Loss Mitigation Fund. There you go. Thank you. Are not included in 21-22 because those are one-time funds. So when you receive a one-time funds, you can only budget for it on the year that the federal allows you to do that. Otherwise, you cannot move them into the succeeding years. The state revenue, we always get lottery funds. It's about estimated at $199. And COLA for special ed is lower than the LCFF COLA at 4.05. COLA for categorical is 1.7%. We also got mandated cost block grant for 1.4 million. And then the one-time fund for 7.8 million is not included in the state revenue. So there are, again, when federal has a one-time fund, state also has a one-time funds you cannot roll forward into the succeeding years. And we also included the second half of ELOG. So we got the first half of ELOG this year, second half would be received for next year. That's about $11 million. Local donations are included based on historical trends. So what we do is we study the 5-year history of local donations, and we budget for 50% of that because it's quite uncertain in terms of whether we're going to generate the same amount of money. And so to allow for the principals to be able to do their planning, we study the 5-year history and we give them 50% of that money as a planning money for 2021-22. And then we closely monitor the actual checks that arrives throughout the year.
Can I ask you a quick question? Maybe I would interrupt your thought.
No, it's okay.
Okay, can you give a quick comment on why the COLA for general cost living is 5.07 and for special ed is a different number, and then for categorically program is another number? I mean, yeah.
Generally they're the same.
Okay.
This year is quite unique because this year the governor proposed to make up for the COLA that belongs to 2021. That was 2.31%. So we're supposed to receive COLA in 2021. We did not receive them, and so the governor said, "I propose to give you 2.31 in 21-22." Then the statutory COLA for 21-22 is 1.7%, and then there is another 1% that the governor proposed to provide for LCFF. His definition is to relieve some pressure, some budget pressure for school districts. If you add those three numbers with some compounding effect, it is about 5.07%. However, when he proposed the special education, he did not include in the proposal the 1% in the special education program, and further in the categorical program, he only included the statutory COLA for 21-22. He did not provide any COLA that belongs to 2021 and did not give the 1%. So that was the difference. As a reference, in my presentation on the May revise on May 19th, I think there was a table that I provided.
Right, I remember that one. Yes, thank you.
Now, in the local revenue, I think the biggest difference between last year and this year is that the full year of rents and leases are included. Now that the board has directed us to open our rental of our facilities, now we're going to be able to charge full year of rental again. And
really,
so
I mean, is that optimistic? Because in the summer, you know, maybe we cannot use the number. We can use half of the number because we may fail to recruit or, you know, retain some of the customer which already find school facility.
Yeah, and that is still yet to be seen. And I think the beauty about the budgeting is that there are multiple times that we're going to be presenting you the budget, and if we know more, we're going to be able to adjust that. So, for example, in August, we're going to be presenting to you another budget version. In December, we're going to do it again. In March, we're going to do it again. And so along the way, if we see what you're suggesting that we're not really hitting the mark, then we're going to be making that adjustment. Now, conversely, along the way, we might be able to also generate other income. And so you're losing some, you're gaining some. And so those are some of the things that we bring forward during the budget cycle throughout the year.
Thank you for giving the background. I think now the number becomes live.
And my ask, like Trustee Zhang also said, would be to be a bit conservative on these the last minute changes. So perhaps we should be conservative, and if we actually get customers, then we can add to it in August. So we should,
yes, and to give you some information in terms of the conservatism that we apply, local revenue is like one big category in the revenue side. If you look at the first bullet, local donations are included based on historical trend. I mentioned that we only budgeted 50% of the last 5-year average. And so there's already the 50% conservatism applied to it. So for example, if we bring in $2 million in local donations, we only budgeted for $1 million on it. And again, that is to address Trustee Prasad's concern about conservatism. We already applied that. And so as we go through the years and we see that donations are coming more than what we projected, then we're going to adjust them, increase them. If they are not, then we're going to reduce them. But like I said, during the year, there are some pluses and minuses that we report in the first interim and second interim report.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. On the next page, page 6, this is now the expenditure assumption. The previous one is for revenue. This one is expenditure. So our class size remains the same, class size and ratio. We did not change them as you see them on the screen. We included steps and column adjustments in our certificated and classified salaries, but there are no projection for any salary increases. And the reason for that is that the negotiations still yet to happen, and we don't generally factor in any salary increases ahead of negotiation. Cost of 1%, just to provide information, if you just want to run some number, cost of 1% for all employees, including statutory benefits, is about $3.5 million. And here we also provided the new rate for pension contribution, the unemployment insurance rate increase. Special education is projected to have a $50.9 million deficit. So again, it's growing year after year. Supplemental grant, which is commonly known as the LCAP, we're bringing in $16.3 million. And then support staff for Rick's Early Learning Center is included. It's anticipated to open in the fall. And then all the approved budget cuts have been implemented. So those are all incorporated in 21-22, and the related ongoing impact of that. So meaning we implement them in 21-22, but there are ongoing impact in the subsequent years. And all the one-time expenditure due to one-time revenues are not included. So if we have a one-time revenue and we increase the expenditures in the current year, well, in 21-22, those didn't roll out because the money is one-time. We did not project for any contribution to cafeteria fund. And the reason for that is because the assumption that it's going to be, our schools are going to be fully reopened. There's also the provision that every student could eat for free at the cafeteria. And there's also the corresponding increase in the reimbursement rate. And as a result of all of those three combinations, we estimated that cafeteria would be self-sufficient and that there would be no contribution needed. Again, this is one of those areas where we're going to have to evaluate every budget cycle. When we bring it to you on the first interim, things may be different, and we will provide you an update on that. And now the transfer to Mission Valley ROP remains at about $4.3 million.
So actually, one question on this cafeteria.
Sure.
Funds. Will we'll get full reimbursement for every student eating for free, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and it is a funded. It's a funded mandate, not an unfunded mandate.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So under what conditions do you expect this to have to change later in the cycle?
So as much as we would like for every child to come in and eat at the cafeteria, there are various reasons why sometimes children don't come. And so if we don't hit the number of meals that we serve every day, that could potentially affect our bottom line. And so while we're going to be offering all the meals for free, we hope that everybody would come and eat. And that certainly would help our program.
So you're saying that if we misestimate, then our cost may be more than the reimbursement. The reimbursement is based on number of students actually taking advantage of the program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Sure. Otherwise, this should be more like a zero-based budgeting, right? Where if your estimate is exact, then
yep,
your expense and the reimbursement would be identical.
Well, and I think the other little detail about cafeteria is all this time during pandemic, our labor costs have been paid, meaning like we have been paying those. By increasing our participation, we're not necessarily increasing our labor costs, we're only increasing our food costs relative to the amount of consumption. And so therefore, I think the gross margin by doing that is significantly higher because you're not going to be spending any more additional labor costs because we've been paying them all along. Yeah.
So there would be that positive then because the labor cost will be amortized over the meal cost.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Sounds good.
Yep. So then that leads us to the preliminary budget on page 7. So here we again provided you with the estimated actual, which shows 7.51%. And by the way, there is a little typo on this slide. The 12 million that you see in the first column, instead of bracketed in red, it should be a black and not bracketed. That should be a positive number. And so we just caught that sometime today.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the preliminary budget, however, which is the middle column, our projected revenue is 414 million. Our projected expenditure is 426 million. And our projected deficit is about 12 million. We have a beginning balance of 43.8, and our ending fund balance is projected at 31.5 million, with a designation of about 0.6 million. Leaves us with about 31 million in reserve, and that is equivalent to 7.26%. Now, I don't want you to be alarmed with the deficit of 12.3 million, because the reason why we have a deficit is because the revenue for ELOG was received in 2021, but the expenditures is being spent in 21-22. So there is naturally a deficit because the revenue is sitting on one year and the expenditure is sitting on another year. And this is the reason why in 2021 we have a designation of 12.5 million. It's because of that. It's waiting for that expenditure to happen. And that's why it's a temporary deficit as a result of the timing of when the money comes. So
very good.
Yes, so we are projecting a 7.26% reserve. Similarly, here we split them between restricted and unrestricted. And you would see again, similar takeaway, we're contributing 63.2 million from unrestricted to restricted. And at the bottom, we included what the makeup of that. And you see here, 50.9 million is a contribution for special education. 12.1 million is a contribution to routine restricted maintenance. And there's another 0.2 million that is a contribution to categorical program. And so, as I mentioned earlier, 50.9 million, I think this was about 44 million in 2021. It has grown by over 6 million. And it's happening almost like that on a year by year basis. It's because of the unfunded mandate. And so now that we have our 21-22 preliminary budget, it is also a requirement by the county and the state that we develop a multi-year projection. And as such, we have to develop assumptions. Multi-year projection is just as good as your assumptions. And so here are the assumptions that we use in our revenue for multi-year projection. Enrollment is declining, but our funded ADA, we're going to be, this is what I think you probably heard the word cliff in the ADA. This is now, we're going to be applying that because starting in 22-23, we're going to be reverting back into the current law, which says that you have to use the higher of the current or the prior year ADA. In this case, because we're a declining enrollment, our ADA from 2021-22 is higher than the current year. That's why we have to use the prior year, where we can no longer use the 2019-20 because that hold harmless is only good for 2021. Our unduplicated pupil percent is quite consistent at about 26.62. Our cost of living adjustment is already projected at 2.48% and 3.11% for the subsequent years. Similar to the current year, federal revenues remain flat. We're not projecting any COLA from the federal until they let us know. Here again, the cost of living adjustment for state revenues is consistent with LCFF. I think this is similar to your question, Trustee Zhang. Why is it different in 21-22, but now in 22-23 onwards, they are consistent, 2.48 and 3.11. ELOG fund is not included anymore in the subsequent year because it ends in 21-22. Local donations is the same. We budget for 50%, and parcel tax, Measure A is projected at $4.3 million for the subsequent years. Now, on the expenditure, we have no change in the class size. We're planning to keep them the same. Classroom staffing has been adjusted to reflect the decline in enrollment. So if you decline by 300, we generally decline our staffing by 10 FTE, 30-1. Steps in column are adjustments are included, but no salary increases are projected in the subsequent years. And the cost of 1% is about $3.5 million. Here, we provided you with the projected pension contribution, yet again increasing for the out years. And the unemployment benefit rate remains at 1.23% until we hear otherwise. If the state says it's no longer that rate, it's going to go down, then it would be a plus for us. Otherwise, we're going to be using the same rate. For 22-23, we're projecting an election cost of $0.4 million because there is trustee election in this fiscal year. Mission Valley ROP would remain at 4.3 million. Supplemental grant is slowly increasing, meaning this is the LCAP money. Now, we also projected support staff for the Bringhurst Elementary School, anticipating that we're going to open up in 22-23. And the support staff for the middle school conversion of Thornton, Centerville, and Hopkins Middle School are also included in 22-23 onwards. In this multi-year projection, there is no restoration of prior budget reductions and no projections for any new budget reduction in the subsequent year. So even though we're not projecting any cuts in the subsequent years, there is also no projection for the restoration, unless the board would like to have further discussion on that.
Mm.
And so that resulted in our MYP. And if you look at the 2 out years projected budget for 22-23 and 23-24, you see that our projected reserve in 22-23 is 5.87%, and in 23-24 at 5.6%. And so it's dropping from year to year. Is because of the deficit that we incur year after year. And again, using all those assumptions that I mentioned earlier, that's how we develop these numbers.
Mhm.
And then the next slide is just to show you what other funds we have in the district, and we monitor them separately. Here, just want to point out capital facilities funds, which is commonly known as developer fee, has about 19.2 million reserve or ending fund balance. All of these numbers right here are earmarked dollars. They're not, while there is an ending fund balance in each one of those funds, they cannot be used for the general operation of the district because they're earmarked for a specific purpose. So then the next steps from here is that we're going to bring it to you on June 23rd for budget adoption. Hopefully the states adopts the budget on time. We will be attending School Services of California workshop, generally covering all the details of the enacted budget. And then based on that, we will submit to the board a 45-day budget revision in August. So with that, I could answer any further questions you might have.
Mm. Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Trustee Prasad, do you have any question? Is he still there?
Yes.
I think he dropped off.
No, I see him.
No, he's there. He's
Oh.
just on mute.
So I see that we have every year we have increased expense and special ed. And but then I also look at your detailed presentation, and on the children's books and materials, and that is pretty flat over the years. I think that even, let's see, when the state gave us revenue every year, it's increasing, and most of the money is used to fund teacher salary and also increased retirement demand. Is that right?
Yes, we have. We need to first cover, because those are our contractual obligation to factor in step in column increases.
Right.
And based on the existing class size and ratio, we adjust the number of FTE as it relates to the enrollment. And so in the certificated salaries and classified salaries, you will see increases. And you will also, because of the step-in column, you also see decreases because of the decline in enrollment. Further, you also see some increases and decreases based on the funding, whether the funding goes away or the funding gets added. So for example, when ELOG goes away, there are corresponding expenditures that would go away. And that's, you're going to see a big drop in the certificated salaries and also on the classified salaries because that's how it's used. And therefore, since they're one-time money, they're no longer going to exist in the out years. And so that's actually how they change. Now, your question is related to books and supplies.
Right.
Some of the money spent for ELOG are also spent on books and supplies. And therefore, when they go away, they drop because we can no longer expend that. And our projection is until there are specific changes into the books and supplies, they remain flat year after year. We don't factor in any adjustments year after year unless there is a new funding or there are some specific action where we have to increase them by a certain percent.
And you mentioned that by reduction, let's see, by reduce of students enrollment of what's that, 300 students, and we're gonna reduce teacher by what? How many teachers?
So generally what we do is we take a look at the number of students, the drop in enrollment, and we use the average class size in the district because we do not necessarily know exactly what grade level the losses are coming from. I guess if we dig deeper into the data, we would be able to say, okay, like out of the 300, 20 of them is kinder and 15 of them are first grade and so on. Instead of going through that, what we do is we take the total number of enrollment drop and we divide it by the average class size. And I think that's about, I don't know, 27 to 1.
0.5?
Something like that, yes. I forgot exactly what the average that we're using for budgeting purposes.
Got it,
That is not an exact math, just because it's depending on the class loading, how you load the student in the class. It may be more or less, but for purposes of budgeting, that gives us a ballpark idea of how many FTE we need to hire in the upcoming year.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, do we have to stop by 6 because we're kind of running out of time? Thank you so much for this walk us through the presentation.
You're welcome.
Let's see what else. Now we have to, let's see, we just hurry through this for another 5 minutes. Well, this one is a big one as well, the LCAP. That's very long. I mean, I don't think we can go through this.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that, go ahead.
If there were any particular questions, we could certainly try and answer those, but I think our best bet on the LCAP is to leave that presentation to our Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services for the meeting tomorrow night.
Okay, all right. But one quick comment I have is I see that all this money is allocated to different category, and I don't see much in because LCAP is on top of the ELOG, right? Because this is a general fund, and so I don't see much in school how can I say, enrichment or a challenge the students. Let's see, science fair, basically academic achievement. Oh, STEAM. I still see most is focused on learning loss and emotional and social well-being, and just my general sense of the proposal. So I thought that we have already emphasized a lot on from ELOG on the social well-being and the learning loss. So I can ask questions during tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah, and we can certainly talk about that in the meeting. And the LCAP, remember, is not all of our budget. It is largely targeted at our unduplicated students. And as we saw in Mr. Perengau's presentation, that's roughly 27% of our student population. And so some of the goals may be associated with that, and that might be reflected in some of the expenditures. And we certainly can talk about it more at our agenda meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Let's see what else. I'm gonna skip. Let's going to find. Don't have time for solo. But that one is actually no budget issue. Sorry. Let's see what else. African American. So about 6.9, authorize staff to renew the child care joint use agreement. So this one is we hold the rent flat for the next 5 years. Oh, I think I talked to CJ, right? You said we have a building the annual increase.
Yes, there is a in the existing agreement, there is a provision that we shall increase the rate by the CPI, but no less than 3%, if I'm not mistaken, Ravi, right? So the minimum is 3%, but it could be higher depending on what the CPI is.
Okay, CPI. Okay, no,
Yeah.
no. So we go by CPI or no higher than CPI.
No less than 3%. So if the CPI is 4%, we use the 4. But if the CPI is 2%, we use 3%. Minimum is 3. Yes.
I see. But do we supervise, their tuition for the students? We want to make sure that they could also increase the tuition for students, no higher than CPI.
So they are a separate entity from the district. We don't supervise their people.
Okay.
And so the only relationship we have with them is that we are leasing the land to the providers, and they actually put their own building, temporary classroom in our land. And so that was the only relationship we have. In terms of the day-to-day operation, it is truly up to the provider in terms of how they charge or how they determine their fees. Now, one thing that our principals are involved because they are in their campus, even though they don't have any supervision of them, they do periodically check on the facility to make sure that there are no, inappropriate activities, or including there are no overcharging and things like that. It is not our jurisdiction, but it's something that our principals may be able to check on periodically.
Okay, so they do check. That's a good thing, because let's say we offer the rent, which is like minimum, 3%. That's really bare minimum. So we want to pass along the benefit to our stakeholders.
Yeah, and then there is a provision in the agreement also of non-performance, and so meaning like if they are not performing to the standard that the district has set, there is a provision that we may be able to terminate the agreement if they are found to be non-performing.
Okay. All right. What else? I think maybe coming close to, maybe there is one for oh yeah, last one. I think this one is for Kelly, the 16.13, the Rick Wranglers Early Learning Center. And this one, $149,000. That is 13 or 14. I'm looking at old report.
13.
It's 13.
Okay, so this one is under our approved what's called amendment. I mean, it was last time we approved a change order, right? Not change order.
No, the
increase
last
the
time.
fund.
So last board meeting, you guys actually approved the actual general contractor's contract to actually do the construction. And the previous meeting before that, there were 2 actual trade contracts for demolition and abatement that were awarded for Rick Sklankler. And then you guys have also provided approval for the testing and inspection services, as well as our industrial hygienist and specialty inspectors that we need for the actual construction portion. So in this particular consultant is our construction manager that will actually manage everything for the district during construction so that everything is completed as planned and scheduled.
I see. So we have approved a budget increase twice. One is, I think, 18 million. The other one is 13.5 million, right?
No, so we're talking about the Rick Sklankler Early Learning Center. And the first approval, I believe that budget was established at $2 million. And then there was
Mhm.
$4 million that was added 2 years ago. And then I recently came last year and asked you for an additional 1.5 million. So our total budget is only about $8.3 million for this particular project. I think you're speaking of the larger middle school project that had the $16 million increase. And then another middle school project had, I believe, a $13 million increase back in, I think, 2019 or 2020.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed.
But this particular one is a $8.3 million project, and they are going to be providing management over the course of the entire duration of the project.
Got it. So this item is just how you are going to use this this money for a specific function, right? Because the
Correct.
budget is already approved.
Correct. We are not taking
Okay.
any additional funds out of Fund 40 or Fund 25. We're taking the money out of the established budget that you
Got
guys
it.
have already given us and actually using those dollars. But we have to give you the current balance of whatever Fund 40 and Fund 25 is, because that's the budget source for that particular budget.
If I could maybe just add further clarification on it, when we come to the board to ask for a project budget, you give us like a kind of like a blanket dollar amount in terms of here is how much the estimated dollar amount to implement that particular project. When we start bidding the contracts to use those money, the public contract code requires that every contract that we enter into, the board must approve. And that's why this is one of those contracts that we are bringing forward to you so that you could authorize us to enter into an agreement in compliance with the public contract.
Got it. I realize that because when I look at you have this sub link, right? On the history, and I look at the change, from the day one the project started, and then what happened. So when I want to see, let's see, initial budget is 2 million, and then we approve increase, by 1.8, and then at a certain point we approve 1.5. But then on your green sheet, that's a great improvement. I do see now with our improved budget, now the final number is, I forgot, whatever the number, 3.9, something like that. And then it's all balanced out. But I just basically have to see the history, like at what time we increased how many times. And I'll be able to keep track of it. So
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I guess that's all for me. But where's yes, Trustee Prasad, are you still there?
I think he's no longer
left?
here. Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it. Then mainly that's it.
Okay.
Thank you,
All
Trustee
right.
Zhang, for facilitating, and thank you, staff, for being here. And we will see everybody at the board meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. I'll see you then.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.